My parents said I wasn't welcome for Christmas, so I booked a dinner for one in Paris. My name is Victoria Sterling, and I am 35 years old. The moment my mother called to tell me I wasn't welcome at our family Christmas gathering, because my presence would make my ex-husband's new wife uncomfortable, I realized that 20 years of bending over backwards to maintain family peace had earned me nothing but second-class status in my own family. Before I tell you about the Christmas dinner reservation I made that changed everything between us forever, drop a like and subscribe to hear how one woman's decision to choose herself over family dysfunction led to the most liberating holiday of her entire life. Growing up in the Blackwood household in Greenwich, Connecticut meant understanding that appearances mattered more than authenticity, and family reputation took precedence over individual happiness or personal fulfillment. My parents, Charles and Margaret Blackwood, had built their entire social identity around maintaining the perfect image of successful East Coast aristocracy. Our family's social calendar revolved around country club events, charity galas, and dinner parties where everything was meticulously orchestrated to showcase wealth, status, and the kind of effortless sophistication that old money families were expected to display. Image management was a full-time occupation that required constant vigilance and careful attention to how our family was perceived by others in our social circle. From childhood, I was trained to prioritize family harmony over personal preferences, to smile through situations that made me uncomfortable, and to understand that my individual needs were less important than maintaining the collective family image that my parents had spent decades cultivating among their peers. This conditioning shaped every major decision of my early adult life, from my choice of college to my career path to the man I married. Each decision was filtered through questions about how it would reflect on the family rather than whether it would contribute to my personal happiness or authentic self-expression. Harvard Business School was the expected educational choice for someone of my background, leading to a prestigious consulting position that looked impressive on paper, but left me feeling empty and disconnected from any sense of purpose or personal satisfaction. The work was demanding but meaningless, prestigious but soul-crushing. My marriage to James Whitfield at age 27 was the culmination of family expectations rather than genuine love or compatibility. James came from the right family, attended the right schools, and possessed the right social connections to enhance our family's status within Greenwich's elite community. The wedding was a spectacular affair that graced the society pages of multiple publications, showcasing exactly the kind of elegant celebration that reinforced our family's position within Connecticut's old money hierarchy. 300 guests attended the ceremony at the Greenwich Country Club, with every detail designed to impress rather than celebrate authentic love. The marriage itself was a carefully constructed performance that satisfied everyone's expectations, except mine. James was charming in public settings, but distant and controlling in private moments, when the social facade could be dropped and authentic personalities emerged. He expected dinner parties twice monthly where I would play the perfect hostess while he conducted business conversations that treated me as decorative background rather than an intelligent participant. The entertaining was exhausting and artificial, requiring constant performance of a role I had never chosen but was expected to fulfill. Our social calendar was packed with obligations that served James's career advancement and our family's networking objectives, rather than activities that brought us joy or strengthened our personal connection. Every weekend was booked with events that looked glamorous but felt like work. The pressure to start a family became intense after our second wedding anniversary, with both sets of parents making subtle and not-so-subtle comments about their expectations for grandchildren who would carry on family traditions and social standing. When pregnancy didn't happen naturally, we underwent fertility treatments that were emotionally and physically exhausting, while everyone around us offered well-meaning but invasive advice about relaxation, timing, and medical options we should consider pursuing. The fertility struggles created additional strain on a marriage that was already built on social compatibility, rather than deep emotional connection or shared values about life's priorities and meaning. James viewed the inability to conceive as a personal failure that reflected poorly on his masculinity and our family's genetic legacy. 3 years into the marriage, I began having conversations with a therapist who helped me recognize that I had never made a major life decision based on my own desires, rather than family expectations and social pressures that had shaped every choice since childhood. The therapy sessions revealed how completely I had suppressed my authentic personality and interests in favor of playing roles that satisfied everyone else's vision of who I should be and how I should live my life. Dr. Sarah Chen became the first person who encouraged me to consider what I actually wanted from life, rather than what was expected of me by family members who had never asked about my genuine preferences or dreams for the future. Victoria, when you imagine your ideal life, what does it look like? Dr. Chen asked during one particularly breakthrough session. Not what your parents want, not what James wants, not what society expects. What would make you genuinely happy? The question was simultaneously simple and revolutionary, because I realized I had never given myself permission to consider personal happiness as a legitimate priority in life planning and decision-making processes. Over several months of therapy, I began acknowledging that I was profoundly unhappy in my marriage, unfulfilled in my career, and disconnected from any sense of authentic self-expression or personal purpose that extended beyond meeting external expectations. The decision to leave James was the first major choice I had ever made that prioritized my well-being over family image and social expectations. The conversation about divorce was devastating for both sets of parents who viewed marriage as a social contract rather than a personal relationship. Victoria, divorce is not something that happens in our family, my mother said when I first mentioned my unhappiness and desire to end the marriage. Whatever problems you're experiencing can be resolved through counseling or perhaps some time apart. The suggestion that my desire for divorce was a temporary problem that could be fixed through external intervention revealed how little she understood about my fundamental incompatibility with James and the life we had constructed together. Mother, this isn't about temporary problems that can be resolved, I explained. This is about the fact that I married someone I don't love to satisfy family expectations, and I can't continue living a lie for the sake of appearances. The honesty about marrying for family approval rather than love was shocking to parents who had assumed that social compatibility naturally led to personal happiness and marital satisfaction. Marriage is about commitment and responsibility, not just personal feelings, my father interjected. James is a good man from a good family. These romantic notions about love and happiness are unrealistic expectations that lead to poor decision-making. The dismissal of love and happiness as unrealistic expectations revealed how completely my parents prioritized social considerations over individual fulfillment in their approach to family relationships and life planning. The divorce proceedings were acrimonious, not because James and I fought over assets, but because both families viewed the dissolution as a personal attack on their social standing and carefully cultivated reputations within Greenwich society. James's family blamed me for destroying a marriage that had looked perfect from the outside, while my family blamed me for embarrassing them in front of friends and business associates who had attended our elaborate wedding celebration. Everyone is asking what went wrong with your marriage, my mother complained during one particularly difficult conversation. I don't know what to tell people about why you're throwing away everything James provided for you. The focus on external explanations rather than my personal well-being confirmed that family concern centered on reputation management rather than my emotional health or future happiness. The settlement was straightforward, since we had kept separate finances and accumulated minimal shared assets during our brief marriage. James kept the house while I moved to a small apartment in Manhattan that represented the first living space I had ever chosen based on personal preference. The apartment was a studio in Soho that cost more than it should have, but provided independence and proximity to art galleries, restaurants, and cultural activities that interested me more than Greenwich Country Club events and dinner parties. For the first time in my adult life, I decorated a space according to my own aesthetic preferences, rather than family expectations or social requirements. The apartment was small, but authentically mine in ways that the Greenwich mansion had never been. Post-divorce life brought unexpected freedom to explore interests and activities that had been suppressed during my marriage and the years of family pressure that had preceded it. I began taking art classes, learning Italian, and traveling to destinations that appealed to me rather than impressed others. The career change from consulting to art curation was gradual but transformative, allowing me to combine my business skills with genuine passion for creative expression and cultural preservation. The work was meaningful in ways that corporate consulting had never been. My parents' response to these life changes was confusion, mixed with disappointment, about my abandonment of the prestigious career path they had envisioned for someone with my educational background and social advantages. Victoria, art curation is a hobby, not a career, my father said when I announced my transition to working at a contemporary art gallery. You're wasting your Harvard education on something that doesn't utilize your potential or provide appropriate financial security. The suggestion that following my passion was wasting my potential revealed how differently we viewed success and the purpose of education in creating meaningful, rather than just impressive careers. Dating after divorce was complicated by family pressure to find another suitable husband who could restore my social standing and provide the kind of lifestyle that reflected well on family reputation and expectations. You need to be more selective about the men you're seeing, my mother advised after meeting David, a charming photographer who didn't meet family standards for income or social background. Your choices reflect on all of us. The implication that my romantic relationships should be evaluated based on their impact on family image rather than my personal happiness confirmed that divorce had not changed their fundamental approach to my life decisions. David and I had been dating for 8 months when the relationship ended amicably due to different life goals and timelines, rather than any dramatic conflict or incompatibility. The breakup was mature and mutual, with both of us recognizing that friendship was more appropriate than romance. 2 months after David and I broke up, I learned through a mutual friend that James had become engaged to his secretary, Amanda, whom he had apparently been seeing during the final months of our marriage. The timing suggested that infidelity had contributed to our marital problems, though I felt relief rather than anger about this revelation. The engagement announcement appeared in the Greenwich social pages 6 months later, with elaborate descriptions of Amanda's background and the upcoming wedding that would restore James to married status within their social circle. Amanda came from a middle-class family in Ohio and had moved to Connecticut for work, lacking the social connections and educational pedigree that my family had provided through my marriage to James. The match was surprising, given James's previous emphasis on social compatibility and family standing. My parents' reaction to James's engagement was complicated by their continued hope that our divorce had been temporary and that eventual reconciliation remained possible, despite my clear statements about the finality of our separation. James made a rebound decision that he'll likely regret, my mother said when the engagement was announced. Amanda seems nice enough, but she doesn't understand the social requirements of being married to someone in James's position. The criticism of Amanda's social background revealed my parents' continued investment in James's life and their implicit hope that his new relationship would fail, opening the door for reconciliation with me. When James's wedding was announced for the following December, just 2 weeks before Christmas, I assumed the timing was coincidental, rather than deliberately designed to create family complications during holiday celebrations. The wedding date meant that James and Amanda would be newlyweds during Christmas week, which traditionally brought together extended family and close friends for celebrations that had become increasingly elaborate over the years. My parents had hosted Christmas dinner for the past 15 years, creating an annual tradition that included both immediate family and close family friends who formed the core of their social circle in Greenwich. The celebration was always formal and carefully orchestrated to reflect family status and hospitality. The guest list typically included 20 to 25 people for a multi-course dinner that showcased my mother's entertaining skills and reinforced social relationships that were important for business and community standing within Greenwich society. James and his family had been included in these Christmas celebrations throughout our marriage and had continued attending in the years following our divorce, maintaining friendships with my parents that transcended my personal relationship with James. The inclusion of James at family celebrations after our divorce had been awkward, but manageable since we maintained polite, distant interaction that avoided conflict while preserving family harmony and social relationships that were important to our parents. When James announced his engagement to Amanda, I assumed that Christmas dinner dynamics would change to accommodate his new relationship status, though I didn't anticipate how dramatically these changes would affect my own welcome at family celebrations. The phone call from my mother came 3 weeks before Christmas, just as I was beginning to plan my travel from Manhattan to Greenwich for the traditional family celebration that had anchored my holiday schedule for decades. Victoria, we need to discuss Christmas dinner arrangements this year, my mother began with the careful tone she used when delivering information she knew would be unwelcome or controversial. What's to discuss? I asked, assuming the conversation would involve logistics about timing, menu preferences, or gift exchange arrangements that required coordination among family members and guests. James and Amanda will be attending as newlyweds, and Amanda has expressed some discomfort about your presence at what should be a celebration of their new marriage, my mother explained, her voice carrying the diplomatic tone she used when delivering bad news. The suggestion that my presence would interfere with James and Amanda's celebration was so unexpected that I initially didn't understand what she was implying about my invitation to family Christmas dinner. "What does Amanda's comfort have to do with my attendance at our family Christmas celebration?" I asked, beginning to understand that this conversation was heading in an unthinkable direction. "Victoria, we want everyone to feel welcome and comfortable during what should be a joyful holiday celebration," my mother continued. "Having you there might create awkwardness for Amanda as she's introduced to our family traditions and social circle." The explanation suggested that my invitation to family Christmas was being reconsidered based on the preferences of my ex-husband's new wife, a woman who had never met our extended family and had no previous connection to our holiday traditions. "Are you telling me that I'm not invited to Christmas dinner because Amanda might feel awkward?" I asked, hardly believing that my mother was prioritizing a stranger's comfort over her daughter's inclusion in family celebrations. "We're hoping you'll understand that this year's circumstances are unusual, and that perhaps you could celebrate Christmas with friends, or make other arrangements that don't create potential conflict," my mother replied, avoiding direct acknowledgement that I was being excluded from family Christmas. The suggestion that I should make other arrangements for Christmas was devastating, not just because of the immediate exclusion, but because it revealed how little my place in the family meant, compared to maintaining harmony with James and his new wife. "You're choosing James's new wife over your own daughter for Christmas dinner?" I asked, making the choice explicit rather than allowing it to be disguised as concern for general family harmony and celebration success. "Victoria, please don't be dramatic," my mother said, using the dismissive tone she employed when my emotional reactions were inconvenient for family peace and social relationships. "This is just one Christmas. Next year things will be different once everyone has adjusted to the new situation." The promise that future Christmas celebrations might include me was cold comfort for the immediate rejection and the message it sent about my importance within family hierarchies and priorities. "One Christmas where your daughter isn't welcome, but your daughter's ex-husband and his new wife are honored guests," I clarified, ensuring that the absurdity of the situation was acknowledged rather than glossed over with diplomatic language. "James has been part of our family celebrations for years," my father interjected, apparently having joined the conversation to provide additional justification for their decision. "We didn't want to create disruption in long-standing relationships because of your personal difficulties." The characterization of my divorce as personal difficulties that shouldn't disrupt James's family relationships was particularly galling, given that the marriage had ended due to fundamental incompatibility rather than temporary problems that I had created. "My personal difficulties?" I repeated. "You mean like discovering that I had married someone I didn't love to satisfy your social expectations? Those personal difficulties?" The reference to family pressure in my marriage choice was unwelcome information that my parents preferred not to acknowledge or discuss in contexts that might suggest their role in encouraging unsuitable relationships. "Victoria, James is a good man who has remained respectful and friendly despite the divorce," my mother said, returning to her diplomatic tone. "We value that relationship and want to preserve it during this important time in his life." The emphasis on preserving their relationship with James while sacrificing their relationship with me was so shocking that I struggled to formulate an adequate response to such twisted family priorities. "You value your relationship with my ex-husband more than your relationship with your daughter," I said, stating the obvious conclusion that their decision had revealed about family loyalties and priorities. "That's not fair, Victoria," my father replied. "We're trying to navigate a complicated situation in a way that minimizes conflict and preserves important relationships for everyone involved." The claim that they were preserving important relationships for everyone ignored the fact that they were destroying their relationship with me to preserve their relationship with James and accommodate his new wife's preferences. "Whose important relationships are you preserving?" I asked. "Because you're certainly not preserving your relationship with me by excluding me from family Christmas to make my ex-husband's new wife comfortable." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with my parents offering various justifications and explanations that became increasingly absurd as they tried to rationalize choosing James and Amanda over their own daughter for Christmas celebration. Their reasoning consistently returned to themes about avoiding conflict, preserving harmony, and ensuring that everyone felt comfortable during what should be a joyful celebration. None of their explanations addressed the fundamental betrayal of excluding their daughter to accommodate strangers. "I need time to think about this," I finally said, Recognizing that continued discussion would only generate more rationalizations without acknowledgement of how completely they had prioritized others over their own family relationship with me. Victoria, we hope you'll understand that this decision wasn't made lightly, my mother said as the conversation concluded. We're trying to do what's best for everyone during a complicated transition period. What's best for everyone except your daughter, I replied, ending the call with the clear understanding that my family had chosen sides, and I had not been selected for inclusion in their holiday priorities. The days following that conversation brought a mixture of hurt, anger, and something unexpected, liberation from the realization that I was finally free from family obligations that had never truly valued my presence or happiness. For the first time in my adult life, I could make Christmas plans based entirely on my own preferences, rather than family expectations or social requirements that had shaped every previous holiday celebration. The idea that would change everything came to me 3 days later while walking through Central Park and thinking about how to respond to my family's devastating rejection in a way that honored my own worth and dignity. If my family didn't want me for Christmas, then I would create the most magnificent Christmas celebration imaginable, one that showcased exactly what they were missing by choosing strangers over their own daughter. What I planned next would make headlines and force my family to confront the consequences of their choices in the most public way possible. What I planned next would make headlines and force my family to confront the consequences of their choices in the most public way possible. The idea crystallized during that walk through Central Park as I watched families preparing for the holidays and realized that I had been given an extraordinary gift, complete freedom to create the Christmas I actually wanted rather than enduring another performance of family harmony. Instead of spending Christmas feeling sorry for myself or trying to prove a point through dramatic gestures, I decided to demonstrate exactly what my family was missing by choosing my ex-husband's comfort over their daughter's inclusion. If they valued appearances and social status above family relationships, then I would show them what true sophistication and self-respect looked like. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. I would book Christmas dinner at the most exclusive restaurant in Paris, document the entire experience, and share it with the world as a celebration of choosing yourself when family chooses others. The statement would be elegant, powerful, and completely impossible to ignore or dismiss. Le Bristol's Michelin 3-star restaurant Epicure was booked solid for Christmas Eve through New Year's, but my years in consulting had taught me that everything was negotiable if you approached it correctly. After several phone calls and a willingness to pay premium rates for last-minute reservations, I secured a table for one on Christmas Day. Madam Sterling, we are honored to accommodate your Christmas celebration, the reservation manager said in accented English that made the booking feel like a diplomatic arrangement rather than a simple dinner reservation. The next step was planning a wardrobe that would photograph beautifully and convey the message that this was celebration rather than exile. I spent an afternoon at Bergdorf Goodman, selecting pieces that would look stunning in photos, while feeling authentically like my personal style, rather than costume. The emerald green silk dress was perfect for Christmas dinner photos, elegant enough for Le Bristol, while bold enough to convey confidence and joy rather than sadness or desperation. The accompanying jewelry and accessories completed a look that said, celebration, rather than abandonment. Booking the flight to Paris for December 23rd felt like the final commitment to this plan that would either be empowering or completely humiliating, depending on my execution and emotional resilience during what could be a very lonely holiday. The week leading up to departure brought several phone calls from family members who had learned about my Christmas exclusion and wanted to express various levels of support, outrage, and suggestions for alternative holiday arrangements. Victoria, you could spend Christmas with us, offered my cousin Sarah, whose family lived in Boston and had always been warmer and more inclusive than my immediate family. The kids would love to see you, and honestly, we think what your parents did is absolutely awful. The invitation was tempting because it offered traditional family warmth without the dysfunction that had characterized my Christmas experiences for years. However, accepting would mean settling for consolation prize, rather than claiming my own power and demonstrating self-worth. Sarah, I appreciate the invitation more than you know, I replied, but I've made other plans that I'm actually excited about rather than dreading for the first time in years. My brother Michael called from California, where he lived with his wife and 3 children, expressing shock about our parents' decision and offering to fly east for an alternative family celebration that would exclude James and Amanda. "Victoria, this is insane," Michael said, his voice carrying genuine anger about our parents' priorities. "I can't believe they're choosing your ex-husband over their own daughter for Christmas. Jennifer and I are furious about this." The support from Michael was validating because it confirmed that the situation was objectively outrageous, rather than my overreaction to complicated family dynamics that required diplomatic management. "Michael, I know you're angry, and I appreciate that you recognize how wrong this is," I told him. "But I don't want you to rearrange your Christmas plans because of our parents' poor decision-making. I'm actually looking forward to what I've planned." The conversation revealed that several family members were questioning our parents' judgment and considering boycotting Christmas dinner in solidarity with my exclusion. The potential fracturing of their carefully planned celebration was an unintended consequence that highlighted how damaging their choice had been. December 22nd brought a final phone call from my mother, apparently realizing that my absence from Christmas dinner was becoming a bigger statement than my presence would have been. "Victoria, we've been thinking about Christmas arrangements, and we want you to know that you're welcome to join us if you'd like to reconsider your plans," my mother said, though her tone suggested obligation rather than genuine desire for my presence. "Are James and Amanda still invited?" I asked, cutting directly to the heart of whether anything had actually changed about their priorities and decision-making process. "Yes, they're still planning to attend," my mother admitted, "but we think everyone can be mature about the situation and focus on family celebration, rather than past difficulties." The suggestion that I should be mature about attending Christmas dinner with my ex-husband and his new wife, after being told I wasn't welcome because of her comfort, was so insulting that it deserved no response other than laughter. "Mother, 3 days ago, you told me I wasn't welcome because Amanda might feel uncomfortable," I replied. "Now you're suggesting that I should attend anyway, and just be mature about the situation. Do you hear how ridiculous that sounds?" "We realize the situation has become more complicated than we anticipated," my mother said, apparently recognizing that family members were taking sides, and that their Christmas celebration was becoming controversial rather than harmonious. "The situation isn't complicated," I said. "You chose my ex-husband's new wife's comfort over your daughter's inclusion in family Christmas. That's a simple decision with clear priorities. I'm not interested in being a last-minute addition to make you feel better about that choice." The finality in my voice apparently convinced her that I was committed to my alternative plans, though she had no idea what those plans entailed, or how public they would become. December 23rd arrived with the excitement of international travel, combined with the nervousness of executing a plan that would either be triumphant or catastrophically embarrassing. The flight to Paris was smooth, giving me time to review my photography strategy and social media planning. The goal was to document a beautiful, joyful Christmas celebration that would demonstrate how someone thrives when they choose self-respect over family dysfunction. Every photo would convey happiness and sophistication, rather than loneliness or revenge. Paris in December was magical in ways that exceeded my expectations. The Christmas decorations, twinkling lights, and festive atmosphere created a backdrop that felt like stepping into a romantic movie rather than spending the holidays alone due to family rejection. The hotel I had selected, Hotel Plaza Athénée, provided luxury accommodations that felt celebratory rather than indulgent. The room overlooked the Eiffel Tower, offering photo opportunities that would showcase the adventure and beauty of choosing Paris over Greenwich family drama. Christmas Eve was spent exploring the city, visiting Notre Dame Cathedral for evening mass, and dining at a charming bistro where the staff treated solo diners with warmth and respect, rather than pity or curiosity about why someone was traveling alone during the holidays. The solo exploration was revelatory because it highlighted how rarely I had made decisions based purely on my own interests, rather than family expectations or social obligations that had shaped most of my adult experiences and choices. Christmas morning in Paris brought the first phase of my social media documentation. I posted a photo of myself in the hotel room with the Eiffel Tower visible through the window, captioned simply, "When family chooses your ex-husband's new wife over you for Christmas dinner, you choose Paris. Merry Christmas to me." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 2 hours, the post had received hundreds of likes and comments from friends, colleagues, and even strangers who were inspired by the decision to turn family rejection into personal celebration and adventure. "This is the most badass Christmas post I've ever seen," wrote my former colleague Jessica. Your family doesn't deserve you. Living your best life while they're stuck with awkward dinner conversation about why their daughter isn't there, commented my friend Rachel from art gallery work. The afternoon was spent at the Louvre, which remained open for Christmas Day visitors who wanted to experience world-class art during the holiday. The museum was nearly empty, creating an intimate experience with masterpieces that felt like private viewing, rather than crowded tourism. I posted photos from the Louvre with captions about spending Christmas with some of the world's most beautiful art instead of enduring family dysfunction, and forced conversation with people who had demonstrated their priorities clearly through their guest list choices. The engagement on these posts was extraordinary, with people sharing their own stories about choosing self-respect over family obligations and celebrating independence from toxic relationship dynamics that had previously controlled their holiday experiences. As evening approached, I prepared for the centerpiece of my Christmas celebration, dinner at Le Bristol's Epicure restaurant. The preparation felt like getting ready for the most important performance of my life, though the only audience that mattered was myself. The emerald dress photographed beautifully in the hotel lighting, and the jewelry added elegance that conveyed celebration rather than defiance. The look was sophisticated and joyful, exactly the message I wanted to communicate about choosing yourself over accepting poor treatment. The walk to Le Bristol through Paris's decorated streets felt like a victory lap rather than a lonely journey. The city was alive with Christmas energy, and I felt connected to the celebration, despite being thousands of miles from family who had made it clear that my presence was negotiable. Le Bristol's Epicure restaurant was everything I had hoped: elegant, intimate, and staffed by professionals who treated solo diners with the same respect and attention as couples celebrating anniversaries or families gathering for special occasions. "Mademoiselle Sterling, welcome to Epicure," the maître d' said, leading me to a beautifully appointed table with views of the restaurant's garden. "We are delighted to host your Christmas celebration." The table setting was exquisite, with fine china, crystal glasses, and silverware that reflected the restaurant's Michelin 3-star standards. Fresh flowers and candles created ambiance that felt romantic and special, rather than highlighting my solo status. The wine pairing with dinner was exceptional, with the sommelier explaining each selection and ensuring that my dining experience rivaled any celebration I might have attended with companions. The service was attentive without being intrusive, professional without being cold. Most importantly, I felt genuinely happy in a way that I hadn't experienced during family Christmas celebrations in years. The dinner was elegant, delicious, and completely focused on my enjoyment, rather than managing family dynamics or meeting social expectations. The photos I took during dinner captured genuine joy and satisfaction, rather than performed happiness. The lighting was perfect, the food was gorgeous, and my expression conveyed someone who was exactly where she wanted to be on Christmas Day. "Christmas dinner for one at Epicure in Paris," I captioned the main photo. "Sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is choosing your own worth over other people's dysfunction. This is what self-respect looks like." The post exploded across social media platforms, being shared thousands of times by people who resonated with the message about choosing personal dignity over accepting poor treatment from family members who had demonstrated their priorities clearly. News outlets picked up the story within 24 hours, with headlines like, "Woman spends Christmas in Paris after family chooses ex-husband's new wife over her," and "The ultimate self-care Christmas: how one woman turned family rejection into Parisian adventure." The coverage included interviews with relationship experts who discussed the broader implications of my decision for understanding healthy boundaries and the importance of self-advocacy when family relationships become toxic or one-sided. "What Victoria Sterling did represents the ultimate act of self-respect," said Dr. Patricia Williams, a family therapist quoted in several articles. Rather than accepting poor treatment or begging for inclusion, she demonstrated that her worth isn't negotiable and that she's capable of creating joy independently. The international attention brought interview requests from morning shows, podcasts, and magazines who wanted to discuss the decision to choose Paris over family dysfunction and the broader themes about setting boundaries with difficult relatives. "The response has been incredible," I told a Good Morning America producer during a phone interview from Paris. "Thousands of people have shared their own stories about choosing self-respect over accepting poor treatment from family members who take their presence for granted." The story resonated particularly strongly with women who had experienced similar family dynamics, where their needs were consistently deprioritized in favor of maintaining harmony, or accommodating difficult relatives who received preferential treatment. "I've been the family peacekeeper for 20 years, one woman wrote in response to my posts. "Your Christmas in Paris has inspired me to stop accepting crumbs and start demanding the respect I deserve." The week between Christmas and New Year's was spent exploring Paris, while managing media interviews and social media engagement that had transformed my personal statement into a cultural phenomenon about family boundaries and self-worth. Museums, cafes, shopping, and long walks along the Seine created a holiday experience that was restorative and joyful in ways that family obligations had never provided. The solo travel was empowering rather than lonely, adventurous rather than isolating. Most importantly, I felt proud of myself for the first time in years, rather than exhausted from managing other people's expectations and emotions at the expense of my own needs and happiness. The flight home to New York brought mixed emotions about returning to reality after a transformative week that had changed my relationship with family dynamics and personal worth in fundamental ways. The apartment in Soho felt different when I returned, like a space that belonged to someone who had claimed her own power, rather than someone who accepted whatever treatment others decided to provide. January brought consequences for my family's Christmas decision that extended far beyond my absence from their dinner table. The media coverage had reached Greenwich, where their social circle was buzzing about the public exposure of family dynamics that were typically hidden behind closed doors. My mother's first phone call after my return was awkward and defensive, focusing on damage control rather than acknowledgement of how their decision had affected our relationship. "Victoria, we had no idea you were planning to make our private family matter so public," she said, apparently more concerned about social embarrassment than the underlying issues that had prompted my Paris trip. "You made it public when you chose my ex-husband's new wife over your daughter for Christmas dinner," I replied. "I just documented the natural consequences of that choice." The conversation revealed that their Christmas dinner had been uncomfortable and tense, with several guests asking pointed questions about my absence and expressing disapproval of their priorities and decision-making process. "James and Amanda left early because the atmosphere was so awkward," my mother admitted. "Several people made comments about how wrong it was that you weren't there." The revelation that their carefully planned celebration had been disrupted by my absence was satisfying confirmation that excluding family members creates more problems than including them, regardless of minor social discomfort. "Maybe next year you'll remember that family relationships are more important than managing other people's comfort," I suggested, though I had no intention of subjecting myself to future holiday gatherings that treated my presence as negotiable. 3 months after Christmas, the permanent changes in our family dynamics had become clear. Several relatives had expressed support for my decision and criticism of my parents' choice, creating lasting divisions that extended beyond holiday planning. My relationship with my parents remained cordial but distant, with clear understanding that I would no longer accept secondary status in family planning or allow their social considerations to override my personal dignity and worth. Most importantly, the Paris Christmas had demonstrated that I was capable of creating joy and celebration independently rather than depending on family inclusion for holiday happiness and personal validation. The experience taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is refuse to accept poor treatment, even from family members who assume your presence and affection are guaranteed, regardless of how they choose to treat you. Today, as I plan this year's holiday celebrations, I'm considering a return to Paris, or perhaps exploring Christmas markets in Vienna or Prague. The decision will be based entirely on my preferences, rather than family obligations or social expectations. The Christmas dinner for one in Paris wasn't about proving a point to my family, though it certainly accomplished that goal. It was about proving to myself that I deserve celebration, respect, and joy, regardless of whether other people choose to provide those things. Sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is the freedom to choose your own worth over other people's dysfunction, and sometimes that choice looks like Christmas dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant in the most beautiful city in the world. What about you? Have you ever had to choose between accepting poor treatment from family or creating your own celebration and happiness? How did you handle the situation? And what did you learn about your own worth in the process? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life stories about choosing yourself when others choose to undervalue your importance in their lives.